It's time for the exciting adventures of Sky Girl Reporter.
Recently, I went to Washington, D.C. Hi guys, so we're outside of Congresswoman Sara Jacobs' office and we're about to head in. So let's go. The first thing I did was visit my good friend Congresswoman Sara Jacobs. Come on in. If you remember last summer, I interviewed her and she gave me a congressional award. She also invited me to visit her office in Washington, D.C.
Welcome!
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. You enjoying your time in DC?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
She was very busy, but she made a little bit of time to see me. She also got me tickets to tour the U.S. Capitol.
Well, I just wanted to say hi while you're here. I've got a meeting I have to run to in a little bit. But your time in DC, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Can you guess where I am now? I'm at the Lincoln Memorial. I looked at a bunch of amazing memorials. I hung out with Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I also went to the Vietnam War Memorial with the names of almost 58,000 soldiers who died in Vietnam.
It is requested that everyone remain silent and standing.
On another day, I visited Arlington National Cemetery. We watched the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I also saw the internal flame where the remains of John F. Kennedy is buried and both of his brothers. Check this out. I also checked out some amazing museums. One of my favorites was the Air and Space. They have hundreds of aircrafts covering the history of flight, from the Wright brothers' first plane to a lunar capsule. I even got to touch a piece of the moon. They had some other really cool exhibits. And of course, you know what this is, right? This is the Star Trek Starship Enterprise from the original series. We also checked out some other cool museums. If you know what that is, then you know where I am. I'm at the International Spy Museum on a secret mission, so let's go check it out. But that's a video for another day. Today, we're gonna go to the most important and impactful museum I visited, the United States Memorial Holocaust Museum. It was really sad and I ended up crying at the end. They have exhibits about all the horrible things that happened during the Holocaust. They had exhibits about how it started and showed what it was like. When you first go in, you get an ID card of one of the people that were in the concentration camps. I was so happy when I learned that the person I got survived the Holocaust. But of course, that was only one of the lucky ones and millions didn't. One of the exhibits they had was art done by children, showing their feelings about the Holocaust. It was behind this backdrop where I was lucky enough to interview an actual Holocaust survivor. Normally my videos are about 10 to 12 minutes long, but this video is going to be a little longer because I really want to show what happened. Peter, the survivor I interviewed, was a really good speaker, and everything he said was so important, and I didn't want to cut any of that out. Hey everyone, welcome back to Sky Girl Reporter, and I am here with Peter, and he is a Holocaust survivor, and we're going to be interviewing him. My first question is, can you tell me a little bit about your life during the Holocaust?
I'm a child survivor of the Holocaust. I was born in 1941, and I was almost 40 years old when the Holocaust was over. So my memories, my personal memories, goes back to age 3.5, which was the worst part of the Holocaust in Hungary. That's when Hungary was invaded by Nazi Germany, and that's when the deportation of the Hungarian Jews started. And in the matter of 3.5 months, more than 450,000 Hungarian Jews were taken to the camps. We survived. I and my mom survived. Unfortunately, my father did not. He was taken to a forced labor battalion. He was taken to Ukraine when the Hungarian army went with the German army, invaded the Soviet Union. And during war activities, that was the official notification my mother got that my father disappeared during war activities, which could have been anything: being captured by the Soviets, being blown up by a mine, being taken to Siberia, like some of the people who served in the labor battalions were taken. Unfortunately, my father never came back. We lived in Budapest, and that saved our life, among them other things, specifically my mother's determination to survive, and also her resourcefulness during those days between life and death. There was a very thin line. And we survived after we had to leave our apartment when the Hungarian government forced all the Jews to move to the ghettos. In Budapest, the ghetto wasn't big enough to contain all the Jews. Therefore, the government set up so-called Yellow Star houses. Apartment buildings were designated by the government for Jews and Jews only. Non-Jews had to move out and Jews moved in. They put the Yellow Star of David on those houses, so the government always knew where the Jews were. And my mother and I, moved in one of those Yellow Star houses.
How long did you have to stay in those houses?
Well, the Germans came in March 1944, and in April the Hungarian government ordered all the Jews to move to these designated houses, or the ghetto. And we were there until the late summer of 1944, when actually in October 1944, the far-right fascist party, the Arrow Cross, took over the Hungarian government, and Jews who were alive were not safe anymore. And while we moved out of the Yellow Star houses, we still didn't move to the Budapest ghetto, because in Budapest there were some action by neutral countries like Sweden and Spain and Portugal to save as many Jews as possible. So they rented out apartment houses. They put the plaque of the embassy on these houses, and under international laws, people who were inside those houses were protected. My mother and I, moved to one of these apartment houses, which were under the protection of the Swiss embassy. And we lived there for another month and a half when the Hungarian fascist party, the Arrow Cross, took over the government. They couldn't care about international laws anymore, and they rounded up the Jews from these houses also. And that's when my mom and I moved to the Budapest ghetto for the last few weeks of the Holocaust in Hungary, and we lived in the Budapest ghetto until it was liberated by the Soviet Red Army in January 1945.
What was life like in the ghetto?
We lived in a bombed-out house. The house itself was intact, but all the windows were blown out because of the detonation. Budapest was bombed relentlessly by the Allied forces and the Soviets, and the only safe place at that time was there were no bomb shelters. the basement of the building, and that's where we spent most of our days. The air raids were during the raids. That time navigation wasn't that good, and so during the night we were able to get out of the basement, but it was November, December 1944. It was very cold, and spending a night in a windowless apartment was very hard. I don't know, my mom got blankets from somewhere, I don't know how many, but she put all the blankets on me, and we survived under those harsh circumstances. Food was not available. By that time, grocery stores were empty. People went to the countryside to exchange valuables, mostly jewelry, for food, because the farmers, they still had milk and bread and other necessities, and that's how we survived. Also, my mom told me the story, I don't remember because I didn't go with her, that between two bombing raids, she went out from the apartment building. She went to houses which were actually hit by bombs, and half of the building was still intact. And she went through the building, finding some leftover food in pantry, and that's how we survived.
How did you end up leaving the ghetto?
Well, when the Soviet Red Army liberated the ghetto, we could go back to our apartment building, which was again was not hit by actual bomb. Half of the buildings in Budapest were destroyed. Our building where my parents lived before the war was intact, and the person, it was a husband and wife who occupied our apartment while we were away. We left everything behind. We could, my mom could just take the most necessary documents and valuables in a small suitcase. When we had to leave the apartment, we went back. The couple who occupied our apartment let us in. We shared the apartment for a few months until they moved out, and we started a new life practically from scratch.
It must be hard to talk about this. Why do you talk about it so often?
Yes, it is very hard to talk about my experience and my family's experience. But I realized I have to do it. I owe to the 6 million Jews who died during the Holocaust. I owe it to my father, who never been able to tell his story. And I have to do it because, unfortunately, anti-Semitism and hatred is alive and well. And currently it's up on the surface and getting worse and worse. So I thought that serving at the museum and educating young people like you who came to the museum, or giving presentations over the internet or visiting places, would help educating people, because that's the single most important thing in order to understand what happened during the Holocaust, making sure that it will never happen again to anyone.
You've spoken about this a lot. What have you learned through your talks?
I always wanted to volunteer at the museum, but I had to work for a long time to help my children get through college and get married. So I was in my early 70s when I started volunteering here. And first I was reluctant to talk about my experience and also our family experience. I had not an image problem, but I was so young that I was afraid that my credibility will be questioned, that I was so young, so everything I would say cannot be supported by fact. But fortunately, my mom, who did not talk about her Holocaust experience, the things I observed, but I could not process in my mind because I was so young. In her late 80s, I made a video interview with her about 2.5 hours. She told everything what happened to her and my dad before the war, during the Holocaust, and right after the Holocaust. So I had a pretty good grasp on our story. Also, my mom started a diary during the Holocaust, and she wrote everything down, not everything, but a lot of things what happened to us. Her purpose was not to write a diary. She just wanted to have a reminder. She hoped that my father will come back one day and she will be able to tell him everything what happened to us while he was away. So having those documents helped me to better understand and better present our story. And when people doubted my credibility, I could point them to those diaries and the interview, which is available at the museum website.
What do you want people to know about what happened?
The short encounter I have with people, 5-10 minutes, and even when I make a presentation and I have 45-50 minutes, it's not enough time to tell the whole story. So my intention is to tell the story as much as I can, but also tell why it happened. So the people will not only understand and have knowledge of the Holocaust, but also they can come away with something they can use or apply in their everyday life. So I get frequently questioned about how I dealt with the trauma of the Holocaust. And that's a legitimate question for many survivors who were much older than I was, or just were teenagers, because their experience was quite different. So I cannot talk about trauma in a sense, medical sense, but I can talk about what it meant to grow up without a father, being raised by the single mother, and dealing with the effect of not having grandparents to go to or celebrate birthday while I was young. And I realized all these things only after I had my own family, and I rejoice with my children, their experience growing up in a full family. So my trauma was a late recognition what I missed. I missed my childhood.
You wrote a lot about your dad. Can you tell me about that?
Unfortunately, I don't have personal memory of him because my mom was actually pregnant when he was taken to the force, pregnant with me when he was taken to the forced labor battalion. Fortunately for him and for us, he was on leave on the very day when I was born. So I have a few pictures of him and I as a newborn baby. Everything I know about him, I know from my mom to begin with, from that interview I made for all the stories she told me throughout the years. And also he wrote postcards from the 4th Labor Battalion. And my mom preserved a stack of cards he wrote until late December 1942, just before he was taken to Ukraine. And from postcards, I know how much he loved me, how much he longed to be again. And I know about him because he had a diary of a ski trip he did with his friend to Austria before the war started. And so I knew that he loved outdoors just like I do today, that they went kayaking on the Danube River and camping with my mom and with their friends during the summer. They went skiing during the winter. I have pictures of them, the two of them, kayaking and skiing. And so a lot of things I have been doing today as far as my health allows me, I inherited from him. So although again I don't have personal experience with him, but everything I know about him gave me hope when I was hopeless, encouraged me when I needed encouragement. And so this is why he's so dear to me.
If you could say anything to your dad now, what would you say?
I love you, Dad. I would say in Hungarian, nagyon szeretlek, apukám, and hug him and would cry.
What can young people do to make sure this never happens again?
That's one thing why I'm here every Friday in the museum and meet visitors and young people like yourself. Not only tell the story, but a couple of things I learned, namely that the Holocaust did not happen in a vacuum. There were millions of people who did not actively participate in the Holocaust, but they saw what was happening to their neighbors, to their colleagues, to the people they met in the grocery store, and they did absolutely nothing. So one lesson I would like you to take home and young people to learn, that you cannot be a bystander. When you see discrimination, when you see bullying other people for whatever reason, and whatever that person might be, you might not like him for whatever reason, but if people express hatred, you cannot be silent. You have to stand up and you have to speak out, because that's one important thing in order to prevent another Holocaust. The other lesson is, and that's why our museum is here, to educate people, because some of the anti-Semitism we see today comes from being ignorant of history of the Jewish people, history of the Middle East, and therefore being educated and knowing facts and fighting words with words, knowing facts, that's extremely important. So learn as much as you can and use it by educating other people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it, and I wish you good luck.
I'd like to give a big thanks to Peter for giving me his time and letting me interview him. And I'd like to give another big thanks to Emily who set all of this up. To learn more about Peter and his story, or just learn about the Holocaust, go to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.org and learn this history so nobody forgets what happened, and to make sure it never happens again.